A life spared. A court in Pakistan reaches a ruling in the case of a Catholic woman facing the death penalty for blasphemy. On the march, as a caravan of Central American migrants continues toward the U.S., Catholic groups are speaking out. A Vatican mystery. We're in Rome with a look at a recent discovery and why authorities are involved. And some tricks and treats. Engineers from NASA put their spin on Halloween. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, October 31st, 2018. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. A landmark ruling today out of Pakistan. The country's Supreme Court decides to spare a Catholic woman's life after she spent almost a decade on death row. Asia Bibi had been found guilty of blasphemy, but today she won her appeal. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee has reaction from the State Department. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. Human rights and religious freedom advocates around the world are praising the decision by Pakistan's High Court to free Asia Bibi. That includes officials here at the State Department who have urged Pakistan to get rid of their blasphemy laws because, like Bibi, they're often used to harass religious minorities.
Asia Bibi, a Catholic and mother of 5, is finally free after 8 years on death row. Pakistan's Chief Justice announcing Bibi's acquittal today, ordering her immediate release. Human rights activist Tahira Abdullah says the ruling is a victory for religious freedom in her country.
The Supreme Court of Pakistan has rendered such an excellent judgment. It is a landmark judgment, a milestone judgment, and it will be a precedent-setting judgment for many decades.
Bibi is at an undisclosed location for her security and is expected to leave the country soon. Supporters from a hardline Islamic group gathered in Karachi following the verdict, blocking the main road while chanting slogans and holding placards reading, "Hang blasphemous Asia." The charges against Bibi date back to 2009, when she had an argument with 2 Muslim women while she was gathering water. The women claim she made derogatory remarks about Muhammad, which is not allowed under Pakistan's strict blasphemy laws. Bibi's case gained international attention and led to dozens of protests leading up to today's decision. Abdullah says authorities don't do enough to protect vulnerable religious minorities like Christians from the mobs.
The law enforcement agencies, the police, is responsible for the protection of the life, the security, the property of Asia Bibi, her family, her friends, her supporters, the Christian community.
State Department officials offered similar sentiments during their inaugural ministerial to advance religious freedom in July. There, 15 countries signed on to a statement condemning any laws preventing or punishing others from talking openly about their faith.
The government and military in Pakistan is moving quickly to rein in protests, enforcing a law preventing public gatherings of more than 4 people. Representatives here from the State Department also say they've warned the country multiple times about the consequences of its blasphemy laws. Lauren?
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the State Department. Thank you. And joining me now to talk more about Asia Bibi's release is Gary Bauer, Commissioner with the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Welcome to the program.
Great to be here.
The Islamic political party in Pakistan has condemned this ruling. She and her family have had death threats.
Yes.
How concerned are you for her safety?
Well, we're very concerned. I mean, first of all, it's wonderful news after having a death penalty hanging over her head for 9 years that the Supreme Court at least did the right thing in her case. But certainly her safety, the safety of her family, the safety of her lawyer, of quite frankly the Supreme Court justices, and the safety of Christian communities, enclaves all over Pakistan are all at risk in the wake of this ruling. And it's imperative for the Pakistani government to do everything in its power to protect people.
Why do you think this happened now? Why did the Supreme Court all of a sudden decide, oh, okay, we're just going to let this go?
You know, obviously, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom has been speaking about this, and We've been recommending for years that Pakistan be labeled a country of particular concern because of their violation of religious liberty, and certainly our State Department has spoken up. And I would like to think that what happened was not to please us, but that this is a sign that Pakistani leaders, both in the judiciary and other places, are looking about how Pakistan can enter the modern world. How can they be a place where people would want to invest? How can they make sure that all Pakistanis, no matter what their religion, are protected and safe to worship God as they see fit?
I think
this is a great decision for the Pakistani nation.
I think invest is the key term there. It
so.
seems to me as if that money could be a big driver here, because Pakistan is still holding 40 other people on these blasphemy laws. What about them?
It's shocking, it's disturbing, and it's unacceptable. And while Pakistan has taken a step forward, and their Prime Minister today, Prime Minister Khan, went on nationwide TV to tell people that they needed to calm down and observe a normal civilized behavior. Nonetheless, as long as these laws are on the books, as long as people are in jail with these kinds of threats hanging over their head, Pakistan will still have a hard time being accepted into the community of nations in the way that they would like.
Gary Bauer, Commissioner with the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Great to be with you, Lauren.
In just 6 days, Americans will decide if Republicans continue to hold Congress. Democrats need 2 seats in the Senate and 26 in the House. And our EWTN News Nightly exclusive national poll of weekly church-going Catholics finds that the issue of immigration is second only to the economy. Correspondent Jason Calvi brings us to the campaign trail.
Republicans from Tennessee.
Now the caravan is coming.
To Minnesota.
A caravan of illegal immigrants marching on America.
To Arizona's very close Senate race.
Every single day, everywhere I go, people are asking me about the caravan. Every single day they're asking about what are we going to do to secure our border.
Republicans promised to get tough on immigration. A wave of troops has landed at Kelly Field in San Antonio. President Trump has sent 5,200 to guard the U.S.-Mexico border by the end of the week. He says this, quote, has nothing to do with elections. He says it's because of a caravan of Central Americans walking to the United States. But former President Barack Obama accuses Republicans of stoking fear to win an election.
They're trying to convince everybody to be afraid of a bunch of impoverished, malnourished refugees 1,000 miles away. That's the thing that is the most important thing in this election.
Rick Jones of Catholic Relief Services in El Salvador tells me the migrants are fleeing gangs and violence.
People are trying to protect their families and their children from the harm that they have at home. And we need to send a message that we're going to make sure that they're protected. That's part of what Catholic social teaching is all about, is really protecting people who are in harm's way.
And if the Central Americans reach the United States?
Any person who is fleeing persecution in their country of origin may present themselves at a port of entry in the United States and request asylum. They have to tell the CBP officer that they have a fear of returning to their country.
But in our homeland, the ads heat up with just 6 days till the election.
The caravan is coming. Some say criminals among them.
Catholic Diocese Saturday celebrated Mass right at the border. The American Diocese of El Paso and Las Cruces, and then the Mexican Diocese of Ciudad Juarez hold their annual border Mass right at the wall. It's near Mount Cristo Rey. It's a tall statue of Jesus. Lauren?
You told us troops are landing in Texas. So what will the National Guard be able to do on the border?
Well, the troops are not allowed to arrest immigrants. They're not allowed to seize drugs. They're not allowed to directly stop the migrants. That's what they can't do now. But what they can do, these 5,000, more than 5,000 active duty troops joining the National Guard, already doing that work, about 2,000 guardsmen already doing that work, which is, here's what they can do. They can provide helicopter support for border missions. They can install concrete barriers, and they can do something as simple as fix vehicles, Lauren.
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi, and Jason will be on the campaign trail tomorrow. Thank you, Jason. President Trump calls for an end to birthright citizenship. He does not want babies born to illegal immigrants to instantly become U.S. citizens. The president challenges people in his own party, like Speaker Paul Ryan, who say it's enshrined in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. White House correspondent Mark Irons, back from Pittsburgh, reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. Paul Ryan says birthright citizenship is obviously something the president could not reverse through executive action. But President Trump blasts the speaker, saying he should focus on holding the Republican majority rather than give his opinions on the matter. Today, the president continued to call for a reformed immigration system.
We want people coming into the country. We want them to come in legally. They want to come through a system that we have set up and that we're really setting up well. And they want to come in, and we want them to come in through merit.
President Trump made those remarks at a White House event focused on the economy. The president says we need more people to fill all the job openings. The president is using the immigration issue to rally his conservative base ahead of midterm elections. We can expect to hear more from him as he continues a busy campaign schedule. Tonight's rally is outside Fort Myers, Florida. The president will host 11 rallies over the next 6 days. Lauren.
And Mark Irons will be at some of them. Thank you so much, White House correspondent Mark Irons. Another round of funerals for the victims of Saturday's deadly shooting at a synagogue in Pittsburgh. Yesterday, President Trump and the First Lady paid their respects to the 11 people who died. Today, 3 more victims were laid to rest. There are also updates on the 6 people injured in the shooting. A bit of good news. Hospital officials said the 2 most seriously injured victims are improving. Officials in Indonesia say they have found debris and passenger belongings from the plane that plunged into the sea on Monday. The crash killed all 189 people on board. Authorities say they may not recover all of the bodies. They also say they have not located the airline's fuselage. The signal from the black box has been detected. Strong winds and waves, though, are preventing its recovery. 7 people were killed today after a suicide bomber struck outside Afghanistan's largest prison. An Interior Ministry official says the attacker targeted a bus carrying prison workers. No one has taken responsibility for that attack. The Vatican has clarified its position on the remains of late Spain dictator Francisco Franco. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, Secretary of State, says it should be left to the government and Franco's family to find a reburial place. Yesterday, officials in Madrid said the Holy See had agreed that the body should not be placed in the city's Catholic cathedral. The Vatican is refusing to deliver a French court summons about clergy sex abuse to the head of the office that handles abuse cases in the Vatican. The Holy See cites diplomatic immunity. Cardinal Luis Ladaria is the head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, and he has been called to testify in a French case alleging church leaders in Lyon failed to report accusations of abuse by a priest. The Vatican discovers human bone fragments during renovation work near the Holy See's embassy to Italy. Now, this is the embassy where the discovery was made. It has raised immediate speculation over possible links to the disappearance of a Vatican employee's daughter 35 years ago. The Holy See says Italian prosecutors have been called in. Lawyers for the family of the missing girl are pressing for more details. Vatican correspondent Juliet Lindley joins us from Rome. Juliet, the Vatican statement didn't mention the girl, but Italian media immediately linked her disappearance to the discovery of the bones. What happened to the girl?
Lauren, let's be very clear here. There is no evidence whatsoever that these bone fragments are in any way linked to Orlandi. But the media have indeed jumped on this news because they're hoping that those fragments might provide clues to solving a 35-year case. It involves the 15-year-old daughter of a lay employee at the Vatican who never came home from a music lesson in 1983. It's one of the Holy See's most famous recent mysteries, and Lauren, conspiracy theories have abounded over the years as to her fate.
What have we heard from the family of that teenager, and where does the investigation stand today?
Well, the news these bones were found during renovation work in an annex of the embassy was made public yesterday. Since then, lawyers for the Orlandi family have been pressing Italian prosecutors and the Vatican for more details. Local news media are reporting that prosecutors are focusing on whether the remains could in some way be linked to Emanuela Orlandi or possibly to another teenage girl who went missing less than a month before she did. Forensic experts have been called in to try to ascertain the age and the gender of the body and the date of death. Experts say it could take a week to 10 days on condition, of course, that adequate DNA can be extracted from the bone fragments.
We understand the Vatican Embassy in Rome has a particular story to it. Tell us more about that villa.
Lauren, Villa Georgina, as it's called, is a grandiose property in an upscale part of Rome, and it's surrounded by almost 5 acres of gardens. The Holy See Nunciature to Italy was donated, Lauren, to the Vatican in 1949 by an Italian Jewish businessman and senator. He was called Isaiah Levi, and he gifted the villa to thank Pope Pius XII for his efforts to help Jews escape persecution during the Second World War. So it's a villa with a lot of history behind it that possibly, and I emphasize possibly, could soon put an end to the Orlandi family's 35 years of not knowing what happened to their missing teenager.
Juliet Lindley, EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent, thank you.
Thanks, Lauren.
Faithful married love is revolutionary, says Pope Francis, like the way a husband loves his wife, like Christ loves the church.
Per sposarsi non basta celebrare il matrimonio.
During Wednesday's general audience, Pope Francis said it is not enough to just celebrate marriage, but it is necessary to walk together. Marriage is a journey, he says, from I to us. Pope Francis was continuing his teachings on the catechesis, do not commit adultery. Coming up, should guns be allowed in houses of worship? We have a discussion. The attack last Saturday that left 11 people dead at a synagogue in Pittsburgh is the latest example of violence at a house of worship. Last November, 26 people were killed. Another 20 were injured at a Baptist church in Sutherland Springs, Texas. Our next guest says the bloodshed is forcing faith communities to face tough questions. Joining me now is retired police officer Jimmy Meeks from Fort Worth, Texas, owner of Sheepdog Seminars. It provides workshops and training intended to address issues of violence that happen in churches and on faith-based properties. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on with you today.
I want to start out by saying that there is no consensus on how best to protect houses of worship, and some of the proposals are very controversial, but it is an issue that communities of all faiths across the country are examining, especially in light of the shooting at the synagogue. So what is the first thing when you go to a congregation that you advise them to do?
The very first thing we advise them to do, and I've done over 300 of these seminars, man, we always advise them, you've got to wake up. If you don't wake up and realize what's going on in this country and at churches and faith-based property, you're not going to do anything. We're pushing 900 violent deaths on church and faith-based property since 1999. That means we're losing just as many people to a violent death on faith-based property as we are in school shootings. So we spend the first few minutes waking them up.
Many clergy and parishioners are very uncomfortable with the thought of guns in church or on church properties. You said that there are a lot of people killed. There were 26 souls killed in November of 2017 at a church in Sutherland Springs, right there in Texas. Pastor Frank Pomeroy told News Nightly it is acceptable for a few people in the congregation to be armed if they're trained, and a strategy is in place to deal with the shooter should one enter. They also say that they have a different security strategy in place. Let's listen to Pastor Pomeroy.
Now we have increased cameras. We have 9 different cameras that can be monitored from our cell phones. I have people placed strategically throughout the property to monitor those cameras and or interject themselves if need be.
So Jimmy, what other options do you suggest to congregations who don't want to add guns to their security protocols?
Cameras do not stop crimes. The Columbine killers back in the late 90s at the high school, they posed for the cameras. Now, I'm not a big gun fanatic or anything like that, but if you want to have a chance at stopping these killers, you have to consider an armed response, or you're going to die. It's as simple as that.
That's pretty strong language. You say there are patterns of suspicious behavior to look out for, and it often begins in the parking lot?
Yes, ma'am. Well, all of these killers that come in, that get inside the sanctuary or the foyer, all of them are coming, and this is just common sense, from the parking lot. And time again, as was the case even in Sutherland Springs, they'll tell you, killers. We don't call them shooters. We call them killers. When they pull up, they're going to be late to the service. They're going to be in a hurry. They're going to park awkwardly. This is just what happens. You can see these guys many of the times, much of the time. So you just got to have somebody out there. The main thing you've got to have is somebody near the front door in the parking lot, greeting everyone that comes in. We're a church. We want to be welcoming, but not everybody that's coming to the church has good intentions. You have to keep that in mind.
What is the biggest pushback that you get from congregations?
Church staffs, pastors, priests who have not awakened to the reality of the day in which we live, that even Jesus warned us in Matthew 10:17, be on your guard against men. They will harm you in a house of worship. But many congregations, especially church staffs, they often conclude that a house of worship will be protected by God because it has a steeple on top and the word church outside. So you have to get past that mindset. Nothing will happen here. It's God's house. That's simply not true.
Jimmy Meeks, owner of Sheepdog Seminars in Fort Worth, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's been a real privilege. I appreciate you caring about this.
Senate candidates from Indiana held their second and final debate last night in Indianapolis. A major topic, abortion. Both incumbent Democrat Joe Donnelly, shown on the right, and challenger Mike Braun say they oppose abortion. But Donnelly believes in exceptions in cases of rape, incest, or if the mother's life is in danger. Braun tells Donnelly of that stance, quote, you can't have it both ways when it comes to the sanctity of life. You cannot say you are pro-life and have your voting record. The Catholic bishops of New Mexico disagree with one of their letters being used in a political advertisement. It appeared in 2 newspapers and was in favor of the Republican candidate for governor. The announcement asked readers to vote their Catholic values and highlighted parts from a 2017 letter from bishops addressing abortion and assisted suicide. Up next, why the new name for the Big Bang Theory has a Catholic connection. And these NASA engineers were able to carve out some time for All Hallows Eve celebrations. We'll explain. On this day in 1517, Martin Luther sent his 95 Theses denouncing what he saw as abuses in the Catholic Church. The move marked the start of the Protestant Reformation. Oregon has the least restrictive abortion laws in the United States, but voters next week will consider a proposal to ban state funding for the procedure. It would be Oregon's first limit on abortion in 12 years. Opponents say the measure targets the poor. Pro-lifers contend it gives residents a say in how their tax dollars are spent. People in Ireland vote overwhelmingly to retain the ringing of the Angelus bells on a national broadcast network. The Angelus is a short prayer remembering the Annunciation and Incarnation of Jesus Christ. Since 1962, RTE rang bells at 6 p.m. for 1 minute before the evening news. One viewer says, to those with faith, it's a moment of grace. For those without, it's a moment of peace. The International Astronomical Union recommends the name of a Catholic priest be added to the law explaining the expansion of the universe, also known as the Big Bang Theory. If the proposal is approved, the theory would now be known as the Hubble-Lamette Law. Father George Lamette was a Belgian priest and was featured on Google's homepage earlier this year. He was trained at physics in Cambridge, Harvard, and MIT. In 1927, he is credited with first discovering the expanding universe. And finally tonight, the engineers at NASA hold their 7th annual pumpkin carving contest. For Halloween, the contestants took standard jack-o'-lanterns and made them spin, light up, glow, and even battle other pumpkins. These designs are a cut above the rest. Oh boy, clearly they are just twisting the knife on the rest of us. Come on, it's Halloween. I couldn't resist. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Let's keep in touch online. Follow me at Lauren Ashburn on Twitter and at Lauren Ashburn EWTN on Facebook. We leave you with a look at our costume contest here at News Nightly. A blue M&M, that would be Wyatt the Anchorman, and an Anchorman, that would be Christian the writer, a clown, all showed up to the newsroom today. Good night, and God bless you.